The Construction Leadership Council has just published what it calls a joint code of practice on mental health. On the surface, it looks impressive. It's well designed, it's full of the right language about preventing harm, upstream thinking and psychosocial risk. But here at the Build Network UK, we've read every page and we need to talk about what this document actually is and who it's actually for, because it isn't for the 99%. Let's be clear about what this industry actually looks like. Over 99% of construction businesses in this country are micros and SMEs. The majority employ fewer than 5 people, and more than a third of the workforce is self-employed. The sole trader, the 2-man ground worker team, the family-run subcontractor, the self-employed brickie working 250 miles from home. This code claims to be for them. It isn't. Let me tell you something that nobody on the CLC Mental Health Working Group will ever say, because not one of them have lived it. Construction, in my opinion, is not one industry. Having joined the industry in the late 80s as a labourer, I can see it is actually 3. And they are so fundamentally different that treating them as one is not just lazy, it's the reason this code fails before it even starts. So there's infrastructure, bridges, roads, tunnels, major civils projects spanning years and over counties. Then there is commercial construction, offices, schools, prisons, new builds, large organised sites with contracts, programmes and a supply chain 10 deep. And then there is private residential. Kitchen extensions, loft conversions, refurbs. The work that keeps the lights on for the vast majority of the tradespeople in this country. I know that world. I worked in it and I built it with these hands. And I can tell you that it is nothing like the commercial sector these working group members inhabit. In commercial construction, you can spend months on a site and never know the name of the person next to you. You are a number in a supply chain. Having spoken to over 5,000 trades face to face up and down the country, this was the most common thing I was told. We are just a payroll number. You invoice up the chain and pray you get paid. Late payment isn't just an inconvenience, it is an existential threat to a small business with no buffer and a mortgage to pay. In residential, you are one team. You go back to the same clients. You build relationships. You work in the same team week to week, job to job. You're mates. You're there for each other. The mental health pressures are completely different and completely ignored by this document. The CLC Mental Health Working Group is made up almost entirely of people from Tier 1 contractors and large client organisations, the commercial and infrastructure world. People who have never knocked on a front door to quote for a kitchen extension, never chased a homeowner for that final payment, never driven 2 hours to a job that got cancelled that morning with no compensation. They wrote a code for the industry they know. The tragedy is that the industry they know is not the industry that is dying. Every action in this document is addressed to clients and contractors, Tier 1 and Tier 2 organisations with HR departments, legal teams, employee assistance programs and the commercial leverage to impose conditions on their supply chain. This code tells those organisations to commission independent programme pressure tests, to embed mental health KPIs in procurement, to run rotation plans with deeply built roles into prelims. Fine if you're Balfour Beatty or Mace. But if you're a sole trader waiting 60 days for a payment that may never come, with no HR function, no EAP, and no buffer when a schedule of works gets reduced, this document has almost nothing practical to offer you. Not one single case study in this entire document comes from a business with fewer than 50 employees, not one. The code even acknowledges the problem, stating directly that mental health risks for SMEs and self-employed workers cannot be managed at the employer level alone. It identifies it with clarity and then does almost nothing to solve it. And then there's the travel guidance. The code recommends, and I want to make sure you've heard this correctly, it recommends encouraging workers to use public transport. I put that to a guard at London Waterloo this morning. His answer was pretty simple. It's not allowed. Because tradespeople, we don't carry laptops. They carry nail guns, chop saws, petrol disc cutters. The idea that a ground worker or joiner should jump on a commuter train to get to site isn't just impractical, it's completely detached from the reality of how this industry works. And that tells you everything about who wrote this and who they had in mind when they wrote it. Then there's the workforce this code barely acknowledges. 1 in 4 construction workers self-identifies as neurodivergent. The code gives this a page and a half without naming ADHD, dyslexia or autism once. No practical tools, no guidance on reasonable adjustments. There is a complete lack of focus on our female workers as well. There's no mention of perimenopause or mid-cycle when iron levels, etc. are low, let alone menopause. According to research by Balance in 2022, the financial impact of the menopause on the UK economy, mainly due to women leaving their roles, amounted to a staggering £10 billion. And the migrant and foreign-born workforce, a significant portion of the people physically building this country, are referenced to just twice, with a vague instruction to communicate in different languages. No mention of the isolation of working in a country where you don't speak the language. No mention of cultural barriers to help seeking. No mention of what immigration-linked job insecurity does to that person's mental health. These workers are not an afterthought. These workers are the industry. Now, I need to stop here for a moment and tell you something personal. Nearly 8 years ago, I tried to take my own life. I woke up in hospital. I didn't have a clue how I got there. I was one of the lucky ones. I know what it feels like to be in that place, to feel there is no way out. When you've got that pain, you feel there is only one thing to do, and that is to end it. Now, I obviously survived, but not everybody does. That's why I'm sitting in this chair. That is why I've read this document cover to cover. And that is why I will not stay quiet when the people who are supposed to be leading this response to this crisis are more concerned with managing their LinkedIn profile than answering to the industry they claim to serve. This is not journalism to me. This is personal. And the men and women who didn't make it deserve better than this document. So we decided to do something straightforward. We invited Henrietta Frater onto the show. Henrietta chairs the CLC Mental Health Working Group, the group directly responsible for producing this code. Her day job title, it is Head of Safety and Wellbeing at the Crown Estate. Safety and Wellbeing. And this is literally her title. We asked her to come in and talk about the document her group produced on camera, publicly this week. Her response, she's busy today and she would need approval from the Crown Estate Press Office before committing to any external interview. Now let that sink in. The chair of a construction mental health working group, whose professional title is Head of Safety and Wellbeing, cannot speak publicly about mental health without her employer's PR team signing it off. That is not leadership. That is managed silence. And yet, just hours after telling us she couldn't speak publicly without press office approval, Henrietta Frater posted on LinkedIn at length, celebrating the launch, tagging government ministers, calling this a paradigm shift. She had time for that. She had approval for that, just not for your questions. And while Henrietta Frater was declining our invitation, her colleague David Buxley was busy on LinkedIn. He called the JCOP launch, and I'm quoting him directly here, an honour. Government ministers, insurers, charities, HSE, all in one room. What a day! But then came this line, and I want you to hear it carefully. Buxley wrote, and again I'm quoting directly, as always, there are some less accurate media articles on the JCOP. So critical journalism about a document that fails the 99% of the industry is dismissed as inaccurate, and the outlet that praised it is held up as painting, his word, a good picture. This is a self-appointed group that will not come on camera, will not answer questions. And when the media scrutinises their work, which Buxley refused to name and quote, labels it inaccurate and points people elsewhere. Then in the same post, Buxley states that the JCOP isn't about individuals or egos or logos. On the very day the chair of the working group refuses to speak publicly without her employer's PR approval. On the very day critical journalism is dismissed and favourable coverage is promoted. No egos, no logos, just accountability, which is apparently the one thing this group cannot deliver. I should tell you one more thing. Several members of the CLC Mental Health Working Group have blocked me on LinkedIn and social media. Not because I've been abusive, not because I've been dishonest, because I've been asking questions, because I sat in these meetings with them and I even travelled to Warwick University with them. I watched and listened to everyone. Why do you think I left this group? The people who produced a code they expect this industry to comply with have blocked the journalists asking them to account for it. If your work can't withstand scrutiny, this isn't leadership, it's self-promotion. Now, I want to be very clear about what we're talking about here. We're not talking about a policy disagreement. We're not talking about bureaucratic process. We are talking about men and women dying. Fathers, sisters, your best mate at work, the bloke who's been on your site for 15 years, the apprentice who seemed absolutely fine on Friday. Construction loses more men to suicide than to site accidents. Every single year. That is not a statistic. That is somebody's dad not coming home. And the people who have appointed themselves to lead the industry response to that, people whose actual job titles include the words safety and well-being, will not come on camera without a press office signing it off. They will post on LinkedIn. They will stand in a room with government ministers. They will call it an honour. But they will not answer to the industry they claim to serve. That tells you everything you need to know about who this code was really written for. Now, we're certainly not dismissing the mental health crisis in construction. Far from it. The suicide rate for men and women in this industry remains nearly 4 times the national average. That is a catastrophe, and any serious attempt to address it deserves recognition. But a document that talks about the 99% while being written almost entirely for the 1% is not a solution. It's a statement of intent dressed up as an action. The CLC is unelected, unaccountable, and when scrutiny arrives, they reach for their employer's comms team, dismiss the journalism and block the people asking questions. The workers this code is supposed to protect don't get a press office. They don't get to refer difficult conversations to a comms team. They get the silence. And sometimes that silence kills them. At the Build Network UK, we will continue to hold this industry to account, not on behalf of the boardrooms, but on behalf of the people doing the actual work. If Henrietta Frater, David Buxley, or anyone else from the CLC Mental Health Working Group wants to come on and respond, the studio is open. It always has been. The question is whether they're brave enough to walk through that door. The CLC has produced a framework. What the industry needed was a lifeline. They are not the same thing. I'm Andy Stevens, this is the Build Network UK, and we are not going anywhere. It's time for positive change.